little poem about the habits of poets. This looks really good. Yeah, this needs a spout. Or a funnel. It was Max Beerbohm who said that the most difficult thing about being a poet was figuring out what to do with the remaining 23 and a half hours of the day. Beerbohm was a great champion of inactivity, a great champion of dawdling, and we need to read more of him in these high-speed days. Beerbohm also said, the ant sets an example for us all, but it is not a good one. So the activities I described here are kind of arise out of that sensibility, and it's called Monday. The birds are in their trees, the toast is in the toaster, and the poets are at their windows. They are at their windows in every section of the tangerine of earth, the Chinese poets looking up at the moon, the American poets gazing out at the pink and blue ribbons of sunrise. The clerks are at their desk, the miners are down in their mines, and the poets are looking out their windows, maybe with a cigarette, a cup of tea, and maybe a flannel shirt where a bathrobe is involved. The proofreaders are playing the ping-pong game of proofreading, glancing back and forth from page to page. The chefs are dicing celery and potatoes, and the poets are at their windows, because it is their job, for which they are paid nothing, every Friday afternoon. Which window, it hardly seems to matter, though many have a favorite, for there is always something to see, a bird grasping a thin branch, the headlights of a taxi rounding a corner, those two boys in wool caps angling across the street. The fishermen bob in their boats, the linemen climb their round poles, the barbers wait by their mirrors and chairs, and the poets continue to stare at the cracked bird bath or a limb knocked down by the wind. By now it should go without saying that what the oven is to the baker and the berry-stained blouse to the dry cleaner, so the window is to the poet. Just think, before the invention of the window, the poet would have to put on a jacket and a winter hat to go outside, or remain indoors with only a wall to stare at. And when I say a wall, I do not mean a wall with striped wallpaper and a sketch of a cow in a frame. I mean a cold wall of fieldstones, the wall of the medieval sonnet, the original woman's heart of stone, the stone caught in the throat of her poet lover. So that's what we do all day. This poem is based on a photograph by a photographer many of you probably know. He's got a lot, I hate the word iconic, but a lot of his photographs are that well known. Harold Edgerton was his name, and he combined high-speed photography with strobe lighting, and he invented this thing called stroboscopic photography. And in doing so, he was able to capture on film events like nano events, you might say, that were just too quick for the human eye to ever perceive. One of his famous photographs is a drop of milk falling and landing in a saucer of milk. And what happens is this perfect corona of tiny milk drops forms this sort of crown around. Probably something that happens every day when you're eating cereal, but all these. Anyway, he was able to capture these events, often events involving a violent collision of things. And this is one of his photographs, and the poem's called Ballistics. When I came across the high-speed photograph of a bullet that had just pierced a book, the pages exploding with the velocity, I forgot all about the marvels of photography and began to wonder which book the photographer had selected for the shot. Many novels sprang to mind, including those of Raymond Chandler, where an extra bullet would hardly be noticed. Nonfiction offered too many choices, a history of Scottish lighthouses, a biography of Joan of Arc, and so forth. Or it could be an anthology of medieval literature, the bullet having just beheaded Sir Gawain and scattered the bandit sworded pilgrims. But later, as I was drifting off to sleep, I realized that the executed book was a recent collection of poems written by someone of whom I was not fond, and that the bullet must have passed through his writing with little resistance, at 2,800 feet per second, through the poems about his sorry childhood and the ones about the dreary state of the world, and then through the author's photograph, through the beard, the round glasses, and that special poet's hat he loves to wear. The generic person. Well, here's